Hello and welcome to VCCTV. This is Joseph Ryan. On November 8th, Prime Minister Narendra Modi shocked the nation by deciding to abolish high-value currency notes. The primary objective was to stamp out black money from the system. Now, over 60 days down the line, has the government achieved its objective? To bring that up and to discuss that, we have with us Aman Malik, Senior Assistant Editor. So, when Narendra Modi announced that rupees 500 and 1,000 notes would be abolished,
right,
he had hoped that 1/5 of the system, 1/5 of the money that were in the system would not come back.
That's correct.
But media reports suggest otherwise.
Yeah.
Could you break that up enough for our viewers?
See, the total, I'll break the entire math up for you. The total money in circulation as on November 8th was 17.5 lakh crores. Okay, out of which 500 and 1,000 rupee notes accounted for about 15.5 lakh crores. So that's about 88% of the total money in circulation, so that money was entirely sucked out. Now, the government had thought, as we understand, and the government of the RBI had thought, that about 3 lakh crores out of this 15.5 lakh crores is essentially black money and it will not come back into the system. But recent media reports suggest, earlier, a few days back, Bloomberg essentially suggested, citing sources, that 97% of the money had actually come back into the system. Today, the Indian Express, again citing RBI and government sources, has said that about 93.5% of the money, which is, has essentially come back into the system. So effectively, it means that, according to the Express report, only about 75,000 crores has not come back into the system. Now, 75,000 crores is 1/4 of the target, which, if you just do a very simple, these are all back of the envelope calculations, it essentially would mean that as much as 2.25 lakh crore rupees may have been laundered fairly successfully by people. This is not to suggest that everybody who's laundered money will get away scot-free, because obviously they're going to have to scrutinize all the accounts and see who has put in how much, etc., etc. All that that's a big data exercise that will have to be done. But at least one can be sure that that much money, which supposedly was black money and was in the informal economy, has come back into the formal channels. So to that extent, if the government's aim was to completely weed black money out in the form of cash, that has certainly failed.
All right. So do you think the government realized in between, that it would be so successful, and that's why they changed the entire narrative and to turning into a cashless economy?
Oh yes, I mean, if you go back to Mr. Modi's speech on 8th November, there was no mention of cashless. There was no mention of using credit cards or debit cards or wallets or Bheem or any of that. The idea was, I'm going to rid you of black money, and I'm going to also ensure that all the terror financing that is done, by way of counterfeit notes and other things, that is kind of brought to a halt. Within about 15-20 days, or maybe less than that, the government kind of realized that this is, people are laundering money, and they're not really being able to do very much about it. So they kept changing rules for over-the-counter exchanges, etc., and eventually midway banned over-the-counter exchanges. Because earlier, if you remember, Mr. Modi had specifically said that everybody would be able to either deposit their money or change money over the counter till the 30th of December at the very least, and after that at RBI branches till the 31st of March 2017. They stopped it midway. They made a lot of other changes. If you remember, there were some 60 changes, 60 RBI notifications that came out during this period. So clearly the government was not expecting, that the Indian system, this Indian system of jugaad, if you will, that will actually work. And that will ensure that, people somehow will circumvent the system. Now, corrupt bankers played their role in it. People who acted as mules for other people played their role in it, either because they got money or because they were coerced into it. So a lot of this happened, and the government's really not been able to check this particularly. We have done a lot of stories where we've actually said that people converted money to gold and into things like bitcoins. I mean, forget real estate and gold, even into things like bitcoins, which would have been unheard of earlier.
So now the demonetization move is expected, to hurt the earnings of a lot of companies.
That's
from four major sectors, primarily real estate and automobiles, FMCG. So how is this going to play out? And last week the government also said that the growth estimate for this fiscal is 7.1%. Do you think that's being a little bit too ambitious, given that other rating agencies have scaled down quite drastically the growth target for this year?
Frankly, that's being way too ambitious, because you see, if you look at the numbers, if you break them down, 7.1%, I mean, they seem to be living in some sort of a rah-rah land, to be very honest with you. The simple reason that they have taken only, these are advance estimates. Typically, till the last year when the budget advance estimates came out, they took 3 quarters worth of data into account, number one. This time they've only taken 2 quarters. They have not taken the month of November. They've not taken bank deposits during the month of November and December because they know that there's an anomalous increase because people have gone and deposited their own money. So the data is really very incomplete. And if on the basis of this data, you're going to go ahead and make your budget, I think you're, like one of the reports actually said, you're actually moving in, you're playing blind, as they say. You really don't know what's going to happen. It's a dark room and you're fiddling around. Insofar as sectors are concerned, like you said, there are 3 or 4 sectors that are likely to be majorly hit. One sector is auto. Well, because auto is fueled by big money. People buy cars, especially a lot of people used to earlier buy cars with cash, hard cash. That used to happen. Yeah. Then real estate. Certainly the secondary market had come to a standstill. I would assume it's still sort of fairly mellow because it was funded by at least 30% cash. FMCG and other such things, well, again, because there's a cash crunch, people are only doing purchases that are absolutely essential but not discretionary purchases. And the telecom sector. Now, the telecom sector has been hit by a double whammy. One is that people who recharge their cards, etc., and otherwise sort of pay for telecom services, they have reduced it to the barest minimum. That is point number one, because of the cash crunch. The other major problem is that Jio, which came out with an offer, a free offer for the first nearly 4 months since September till December 31st, has extended that free offer till the 31st of March, which has basically dented the fortunes and will continue to dent the fortunes of the other incumbent telecom players. And if analyst reports that are doing the rounds are to be believed, as much as 85%, at least 85% of Jio subscribers who have come here to ride this free bandwagon, if you will most likely stick around with Jio. That is what analysts are saying. We are not saying it. And if that is true, that means expect telecom companies to keep bleeding for the next maybe up to 3 quarters at the very least.
Thank you so much, Aman, for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, viewers, and for watching. Thank you for watching VCCircle.